Hi there, Chattylaine here again, and today I am doing part 2 of my making dangles for junk journals. So what I intend to do today is cover findings. Now findings are all the connecting components that you find in jewellery, and I've just pulled out the things that we would probably more likely use in making dangles really for the journals. So I'm going to start with what they are. Some of them you've already seen, or you may already know what they are, but I'm going to cover the basics. I'm going to then move on to making some loops again. That one's a wrap loop, and we could do, I just happen to have a crystal that's got a triple wrapped at the top, and I can show you how to do that. Right, so we'll cover the findings first. So findings are connecting components in jewellery making, and I've laid out a few here, and I'll tell you what they are, and then I'll explain, what they do. So first we have lobster clasps, or the true name for them is carabiner clasp, because they've got basically a lever. Don't know whether you can see this. They have a lever, and carabiners are used by mountain climbers, so I think that's why they've called them that, but most people know them as lobster clasps or lobster claw clasp, as you can see why by the shape of them. Yeah, so there's also hooks. I mean, bolt rings aren't really going to be useful for what we need, so I won't show you those, but these are just wire hooks that you can use, obviously, for connecting bracelets and necklaces, and they could be useful. Jump rings, I've got various sizes, even the big ones here. These are lovely pretty twisty ones, and these ones are actually split rings. Focus on. There we go. Are you going to focus? Oh. So yes, a split ring is a double wrapped ring, and you just wrap it twice around the actual pliers with the wire, and you can make your own split rings really. I very rarely use them because they're so small. I have trouble using them anyway, but they're less likely for anything to come off, because unlike a jump ring, they could still open. A jump ring will still open at the point of opening. So I'll go through what they do in a moment. Let's just carry on with what they're called. You've already seen the head pins in my last video. As you can see, it's got a flat top to it, and then the eye pin has got a loop that I showed you in the last video, part 1. So that's head pins and eye pins. These are all bead caps. Bead caps generally, here's one here, it's the same as this one, is to make the component look pretty. This is a wrap loop, this one. I'll show you how to do one of those a bit later. There we go. So they're all different types of bead caps. Some pretty ones, filigree ones. These are cones for longer beads or things that have got like a point to them. They can go inside the cap, and obviously the particularly good one. They've got a hole obviously in the top, so the bead would go in there. If it's a pointy one, I do have a bit of a pointy one. It's not very good, but and then it looks pretty. So yeah, the bead caps. I do have other decorative metal beads. So these are quite tiny, these ones. These are little balls, they're all kind of filigree looking and that sort of thing really. Decorative metal beads come in various shapes and sizes. Quite a lot of them are flat because when you find a bead, I don't know whether this will fall off. Yes, it will. So we can, oh, that's got a big hole and all. Let's see, and let's put a bead cap on it. And then we can put a bead on it. Oh, why are they all falling off? Is that one particularly small? Let's try an eye pin. Hopefully they won't fall off that. Bead cap. So it looks pretty. You could put one of those on, or you can have one of those instead. Got to get my crystals out. These are only cheap Chinese type crystals. They're not fancy. They're just quite cheap, but they're still pretty. And let's see. Oh, that's in the wrong pile. You can use, let's try a little tiny one, and then a little bally on the top. You already started a bead dangle component. So yes, that's the basics of probably what we would need to use in making bead dangles, and I thought we'd have a little play with making some up now really, and I hope to show you how to make a wrap loop. They're a little bit more difficult to do, but we'll give it a go. So I brought the camera down so that you can hopefully see what I'm doing a bit better. And I'm going to show you the jump rings and how to open and close them really. There's a right way and a wrong way, and I'll show you both and I'll tell you why. So a jump ring connects a component. Let's just, and you could, there's various sizes, and the problem is with certain holes in beads, say for instance this one, this has got a hole on the side of it, and there's obviously a certain amount of this is polymer clay, and it's a pretty leaf, not made by me, I have to add. These are ones that I purchased from a lady that makes them. Her name's Jo Paul, and there's a lot of room there from the hole to the top of that part of the bead. Well, it's still a bead, it's got a hole in it. The leaf is not going to be, you're not going to be able to fit a small jump ring because there's just not enough leeway on it. So in this instance, you'd need a bigger one. Even that could be a problem. These are miles too big because one, you'd never get that through the hole because the hole's not big enough. Plus it looks a bit over OTT, doesn't it? These are 9, these are 8 mils, and these are 7 mils. Usually I use 7 mils quite a lot. I do have a lot of those. 8 mils sometimes. 9 mils are, I bought them to kind of do this type of thing really. So I'm going to show you how to open and close one. Maybe I'll move them up out the way a little bit. They might be a bit too low. I'll put them over there. I'll show you on the big one because it's a bit easier to see it, hopefully. Right, so will you focus, or are you focusing on all the other stuff? No, you're still focusing on all that stuff, aren't you? It's going to have to go out of shot. So it concentrates on what I'm doing and not what's happening with those. Right. So yes, that's better. I use 2 pliers. I mean, in time, I mean, I would use my fingers. Sorry, I've got a dodgy finger there. I've got a bit of glass in it when I was tidying up my workbench and I can't get it out. When you open them, you need to twist. So I grab them either side of the opening, which is just here. I grab either side of the opening and I'm going to twist in opposite directions. And the jump ring opens. And the reason we do it this way is to stop the stresses on the metal. Because if you open it the wrong way, let's show you the wrong way. And a lot of people make this mistake where they pull it apart. And this distorts the ring and also puts stress on the wire at the point opposite to the opening, because that's what's moving. In this one, these bits of wire are moving and that has hardly moved at all here, depending on how wide you've had to open it. Now, to get it onto... So we'll put that one out the way for now. We'll carry on with the one that you should do. Now, the problem is with getting it through there is you'll need to open it quite a long way. It still puts stress on that bit of wire, but not as much as pulling it apart. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to get this all the way through. We'll give it a go. Yep, there we go. So, it's gone through the hole, which is why we need bigger jump rings, because a little one just wouldn't go through there and the bead wouldn't be able to swing at all. Now, closing it up, we need to twist back to the point where they join, and as I do it, I'm pushing them together. And I'm going to give it a little wiggle, pushing on both at the same time. And it should close back up again. Here we go. Now, with something that's already made, you know, with a wrap loop, it's much a secure loop. So you need to add something. Say I'm adding to a chain, for instance. I'll get rid of that one, otherwise I'll put it back in the thingy. We can use the smaller ones to connect because we're connecting onto something that's easier than, say, something like this. So I'm going to do it without the pliers. So you might be able to see it a bit differently if I do it with my fingers. I don't know. So twist apart, stick your bead thingy bobby on, bead dangle, and close back up. Because not everybody's going to have 2 pairs. I've just had to realign it a little bit better. Sometimes when you open it, they do slightly distort, but it's all about, you know, looking at what you're going to be putting on and not opening the jump ring too far, because obviously the wider you open it, the more stress you will put onto the wire. Now, wire has a memory of what's happened to it, which is why when you get a wonky bit of wire, let's just take them out of the way. When you get a wonky bit of wire like this, it is very difficult to straighten it. You can, to the point where it's reasonably straight, but it's already got those bends and kinks in it, and it just remembers them. So, I mean, it's a lot of fiddling. You can pulling of the wire can help. It also, when you try and do this, I mean, I'm pressing quite hard on it, it also makes it stronger and stiffer. When you do this over and over again, you are sort of strengthening the wire and making it tougher, slightly harder, and it won't be quite so malleable. I think I've said it right. So I have straightened it a bit, but you can still see there's a slight waviness to it. Bead is on the wire. So we've got our component and we now need to make a loop. So the wire still looks a little bit bent. So I'm just trying to keep things out of shot because it affects the focus. There is some bend in the wire, but you're going to make a loop with it. So we're going to cut a bit off. So let's chop a bit off. We don't need that bit, do we? And we're going to make a loop. Where's my pliers? Still in shot. Go away. And let's make a loop. So I'm going to, can't feel it. I mean, now I've got some beads on here, I can push the beads. It's a lot easier. But you still need to be at the point where it's in the pliers, because that's the bit you want to be wrapping around the pliers. Hopefully you saw that. So we're at this point now. There's the end of the wire there. Behave yourself. We're going to close it up. It will open again, obviously, because we need to bend it back. And then finish it off. See if I can do it so that you can see. I should have brought the camera down lower in the last one, but I thought now that I've got my bench and the facilities to be able to get a good low shot, and I've probably not bent it back quite enough, I don't think. It's quite difficult because I'm actually trying to watch it through the camera as well. Right. So it's pretty central. It's not really. It's not central at all, Elaine. What are you talking about? Bend it back a bit more. There we go. That's a bit better, isn't it? You can usually tell because of the way the loop is sitting. And I mean, personally, I try, and if I've got a loop on the bottom, I try and make this loop match that one. Obviously they're smaller, these head pins are small, and I'm making a biggish loop because I like to make big loops. So I mean, if you want to make a smaller loop, you just do it further up the shaft of your pliers. So there we are. That's a nice little bead component. We would open a jump ring, slip the jump ring on, close the jump ring on whatever it is you want to hang it from. You can hang it from books, obviously. You can hang it from the chain that way. Don't think I've got any silver chain up here at Antique Gold or Vintage, or some people call it brass. I'll call it brass really, but we'll call it Antique Gold because it sounds better. So I'll put the component on, and any of these holes we can link it on, and we have it on a chain. You can put another one here and further up, and slowly we would build a dangle on each chain. And then we can connect the chain with the jump ring to key rings, and I've got some bigger lobster clasps which are designed to go onto key rings and stuff like that. So imagine a big version of that. And this is obviously not a keychain, but it still could be used that way. I don't think it will go through that because it's too small. Yeah, but we can cut it off, and let's just do the end. Don't know whether it will because it's so big. Oh, let's try one of these slightly bigger ones. Oh, about a fancy one. That'd look nice, wouldn't it? Now then, these are quite difficult to find the... here we go. Let's open that up. Slip that through the end of the chain. Like so. And I don't know whether that will go on there. I don't think it will. No, because they're too small. I knew there's something else I was going to bring. And so you could hang this part on the book somewhere. We can add more dangles going down it. It would look better on silver chain probably, wouldn't it? You can't even see what I'm doing because I've got my hand over it. Silly woman. And so we start to make a dangle. The thing is, with this type of loop, you could, well, not that one, but this one. This type of loop, because it opens, you could actually put the loop direct. Once you've formed the loop, you can put the loop directly onto the chain. You don't actually need the jump ring. But you do have to open the loop in a similar way to how you would open the jump ring. Once you've created it, the best way to open it to go on there is to twist it. Oh no, wrong side. Let's get my chain nose, because they've got pointier tips and they don't get in the way. So I would open it, oh, wrong way round. Let's see if I can show you. I've opened it sideways. Come on, focus you little devil. I've opened it sideways, so it's not straight anymore, but it's enough to connect it onto the chain. Let's see if we can get it to go on. Please be kind. Are you focusing? Oh, it come off. Maybe I need to open it a fraction more, just to make it a little bit easier. You're not playing ball today, are you? You're a naughty, naughty chain. It's quite a small loop connection link. Right, so we've got it on the chain, and now all we need to do is twist it back. What I sometimes do is just get either side and push it down. Once you've formed the ring, as long as you do it in very small movements and don't overstretch it, it should go back once you've created it. So much like, I mean, basically that is a jump ring in itself. If you took that off, that would be a jump ring, and that's how they're created. They're created in spirals, round and round and round and round and round. What would be a mandrel of some sort, and then they're just cut to make the ring. So yeah, it should hang quite nicely. It'd look better on silver chain probably, because these are all silver components, but that's the start of a dangle. Right, so I think next I will show you how to make a wrapped loop, which is what this one is. I'm going to attempt to show you a wrapped loop now, and the only thing is with these ones, I think they are brass based, because the brass is much harder to deal with. Some of these are a bit wonky, aren't they? Let's see if we can find some straighter ones. I always find these brass ones are very, very unusual that you can get straight ones, really. That's not very straight, is it? That one's not too bad. They always seem to have some sort of kink in them. And it's just, you know, the way they're stored, really, I suppose. They're all stored together and they all get mucked up. Right, let's try those. They're a bit straighter looking, aren't they? Not that it really matters, because by the time you wrapped it, it's going to be all bent anyway. Right, let's try these little ones, and we'll go with this sparkly one, I think. And I think we'll just leave it with that, because the longer this bit, it's sort of easier to show you what I'm doing really. So let's move these out of the way, because they'll have trouble with me. Or I'll have trouble with me autofocus otherwise. So we're going to make a loop, but this particular loop, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this up and see if you can see better on the lighter. I think you can really, because it's a dark metal, it shows better up on the lighter base. This bit's not too bad, the other side's gone a bit funny. So we need to leave a little gap between the top of the spacer, bead cap I mean, and where we want the loop to go. At this point, it's not quite the same as the other loop, where it doesn't have to be as precise of where, you don't have to be at the end of the wire, where with the other one you do have to be at the end of the wire, because you're turning the whole wire around into the loop. This one, we're a bit higher up and using the whole piece of wire. So I'm going to push on both sides, and when you're pushing you need to pull downwards to, I don't know whether if you can see what I'm doing properly. We need to bring the wire round the pliers. As I say, this is a bit tougher, this particular type of metal. So you've created the loop. Now with this one, it is a little bit more, what's the word? I can't think of the word now. Forgiving, maybe? A little bit more forgiving. But it's all about how much room you're leaving yourself here. Now, let's have a look. So I've got the basic look, it's a bit bent, a bit twisted, but I haven't got much there at the moment. But we've still got to bend the wire back before we carry on wrapping round the bead. So I'm going to put my pliers back at the point where I want the bend, and this is where you can decide where you want. Stop moving about, you silly bead cap. I can't get hold of it because my chunky fingers won't let me. Right. This is the trouble I sometimes used to have, because my fingers are too chunky to get into little places. Right, so I've got the pliers inside the loop. I've already created the loop as such, as much as I need. And so I'm going to now bend the wire. Oh, might help if I have me pliers straight. Bend the wire back so that we've now got that straight part of the wire, a loop, and then this comes round. So at this point, I prefer, this is just my preferences, some people leave the round nose pliers in. I feel you can't control it because the actual wire can slide round the pliers. If you've still got the pliers in there, the wire slips off, especially when you're doing this. So I'm going to hold the loop in my pliers. These are my flat nose. I'm going to make sure this part here, maybe I'll turn them around that way. I'm trying to get the light on them so you can see what I'm doing. Hold on a minute. Let's do this. Let's pull you out a bit further. Better. Yeah. So this part here needs to be straight out. And the reason is that if you don't have it coming straight out, when you're wrapping, which obviously we're going to wrap it that way round, we need to wrap around the wire with this piece. So let me just move that up a bit because I think I've got too much pink in my light. This will float about until you start getting some wraps on. So you can't do a whole wrap in one go because your wrist won't do that. So I tend to bring my wrist quite a long way back, grab the end of the wire and pull down and round in one movement if you can. As you can see, because you can't quite get in there properly, it's gone off a line a bit. You can straighten it up a little bit. But what happens when you're wrapping is if you can get the wraps close enough together, they will move the other piece of wire out of the way for you. So we need to close this gap up. Oh, hang on a minute. I think it's the light. I think my light's not quite in the right place. Now I've been blinded by it. So just get that out of the way. So at the moment this is still flapping about, and that's because you haven't finished filling that little gap in the wire. So we're going to go round again. And I'm twisting my hand as I go, because your wrist will only go that way far enough and that way. Mine's a little bit more limited nowadays. And I'll go round again. Take off the pliers, grab it again, and I'll come up. Now you can see now that I've basically filled in that bit of wire, except for that tiny little bit in there. I don't know whether you can see it. Yeah, there's a little gap just here, and you've got to allow yourself enough time, enough room to cut off the wire and then push it down to finish off the wrap and tuck in the end. So this side, I think we might be able to go around a little bit more. There's sort of two here, and this is the third one. I will show you again. It's just really getting it tight in there is quite difficult with this particular type of wire, but this is the colour that I've used on her book, so this is why I want to use it. So most of the time I'm using the downward force to bring the wire round the upright part of the loop, this bit in here. So we need to chop that end off. And then push it in and tuck it in. And I have to say, this is when this type of pliers is their most useful. So let's get them out of the way. So I'm right as close as I can get into the wire as possible. So I'm in as close as I can get with the cutters, and I'll put my finger over it to cut it off. Throw that in the bin. So now you can see that little bit sticking out. And we need to push that in. And push down, turn it, push down. I think really I've left a bit too long end on it. Take a little bit more off. Get off, get off. So now I'm going to push down right on that end and squeeze as hard as you can. As I say, this particular wire is really hard to do, so I'm going to show you with a silver one in a minute, because it is much easier. It's not a little bit's come off it, I think. Probably never fell off when I cut it. That's what I would call the front, and that's what I would call the back, because the end is right there. You can sort of see it sticking up. There it is, right at the bottom. All this is all solid. It's not moving around anymore. And one component, and it's another dangle, because it will dangle. Here we are, one wrap loop. Now it is quite difficult to get the hang of. It is all about wrist action and pulling round and down at the same time as trying to hold on to the loop. And obviously with this it is a bit tougher, so I'll show you with a silver. I've got a feeling I'll put the silver away now, and then I will do it a few times, because it does take some getting used to catching everything as I do it. So the more I show you, hopefully the better chance that you'll get of picking it up that way. I found some, I call them Macale beads. Some call them seed beads. They don't fall off. They don't fall off the end because they've got a tiny hole. So we're going to go one of them, and then one of them, then another one of them, and maybe I'll put one of these back on the top, shall I? I seem to be off screen. I think camera's in a different position. I've been and had me tea and stuff like that and come back out again. It's quite late now. I know what I've done. I've pulled the mat off. Right, now then. Yeah, we'll call that a little component, shall we? The thing is, when you're doing a wrap loop, you need all the wire to help you. Otherwise, you start to struggle because you haven't got much wire left. You've put too many beads on. You need enough to do all the wrapping. Maybe I'll flip down my pink cover again now that I'm on silver again. Let's have a look. Just think it stands out better, really. Right, let's do another loop. So that's probably too long. I've got a soft tape measure somewhere. There it is. It's a bit easier to do on a soft one. So you probably need about, I don't know, 2 to 3 mil. Inch wise, probably about 1/8 of an inch from there to there. That's how long you need to leave roughly. Even that might be a little bit too long. But you can tweak it in the curling. We'll put quite a biggish loop on it. See, that's probably a bit too long, really. But it'll be all about where you put the bend. Right. So we're gonna push that down both sides. Like so. We're gonna bring this one around the pliers, so it's much more easier to move because it's softer. And what you can do is basically move the pliers down so you want the tip, and we'll put our bend in, I don't know, about there. Let's do it there, shall we? Let's grab that bit. It is quite a lot bigger, this loop. Going to straighten it up. Swap pliers. Don't need them ones anymore. And we're going to bend and pull, pull, pull. Change our wrist, pull down and round. I think I went a bit cross-eyed there. I don't like it. Too big a gap here. I couldn't see what I'm doing. It's actually worse with this. I don't know whether you can see any better, but there's a big gap just here. Just there. And you can squash it together. and move it up. So I could show you how we might be able to rectify that problem. See, even for me, even I can get it wrong. I've just got to be careful not to break that bead there, because it is actually glass. So see, that side doesn't look too bad, but that side's got a big gap. I don't suppose it matters that much, really. Focus. Stupid thing. Is there something else in the way? It's probably trying to focus on them, isn't it? Go away. That side looks right. So I think we'll call it done. I'll push it in a little bit if I can. Squish. There we go. So we're going to chop that bit off now. That bit that's sticking up. I'm going to try and get it as close as possible. Just so it doesn't fly upwards at my face, because I've got no glasses on. We'll do it with these. Let's see if I can show you what I'm doing at the time. So I'm going to squash right at the very end of the wire, squeeze together, and hopefully it pushes that little bit up, which it has done. Filled the gap in. And we didn't break that wire, that bead, thank goodness. This is quite easy to do. It's gone a bit wonky. And you can straighten it. A little bit of pushing and pulling. And there we are. Probably still sticking out a tiny bit. You can see it just there at the very bottom. My hands are not as strong as they used to be, but I do always like a wrap loop because it's much more secure. It doesn't come off. The beads don't fall about the same. They're pretty solid. They're not going anywhere. But you still get a nice dangly bit. There we are. So, as I said, it is a much more difficult one to do. 3 seems to be the norm. It seems to be the most pleasing, I would say. I think actually that could do with just pulling over a little bit. No, it won't do it. It'll still hang fairly straight anyway. Probably the hole in my beads, probably a bit wonky. I'm not very good at doing small beads. I'm a big bead person. I like the big beads better. Little things are not my cup of tea in all sorts of things. Because I've got chunky fingers. There's another wrap loop. So this one I can actually attach to the book. You can directly attach the loop to a chain. The only problem is with that is if you can't move it. So if you've not put it in the place you want it, the only way to take it back off is literally to cut the loop off and start again. So that's not always ideal. And I also was hoping to show you a scruffy wrap loop and add in some elements to my daughter's garden journal, which I'm now going to have to do in the next one. I'm hoping that part 3 will follow fairly quickly, as most of it's done, and I will show you adding some bits and pieces to my daughter's journal and making a scruffy wrap loop, and we'll see what else comes along the way. So yes, I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching, and I'll say bye for now.